All right. I think we're ready to get this show on the road. All right. Okay. Ah, so, good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, 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 and welcome back after a 2 week hiatus due to scheduling conflicts to Neal Stephenson's Snow Crash. Storytime Saturday. I'm your narrator today, Fraggeth, and we'll be reading further in Neal Stephenson's Snow Crash. One could argue it is the quintessential cyberpunk novel. So if you, or one of the quintessential cyberpunk novels that sort of defines the look, feel, vibe, and everything. So if you have an interest in cyberpunk as a genre, I hope you're tuning in, or as a setting, because this most people doing cyberpunk works take a couple notes somewhere, either from this or William Gibson's Neuromancer. Those are big ones. So last time on Snow Crash, there you go. The cat just leaping off me. He's been sort of down in the doldrums, probably due to weather and a few other factors. So previously on Snow Crash, um, we were witness to uh, Raven basically going on a murder, death, kill rampage. Uh, the basic gist of what happened there is Raven gave this member of the Crips, who are now a incorporated organization, a corporation, if you will, um, and he was giving them a kit with which to make or distribute Snow Crash as a quote drug unquote, and the little portable lab had a um, self-destruct device if somebody left it, walked too far away from it for too long, and they went to get Chinese food or whatever, the Crips that is, and it exploded, and then they went chasing after Raven, who had none of it. They were like, let's shoot at this guy, and Raven's like, nah. I've got like a monomolecular knife, and I'm gonna go and make some bamboo spears and kill a lot of dudes with extreme prejudice. He does, in fact, have. There are good reasons why he's got the tattoo on his forehead that says, I think it's poor impulse control or bad impulse control. Uh, and we had Sushi K's singing. Yeah, poor impulse control is the tattoo on Raven's forehead. We also had Sushi K's singing as he tries to break into the wider world of Western rap music. And he's kind of horrible at it, as it turns out. It was pretty bad. I had fun, but now we're getting back in the swing of things. So, oh yeah, we also learned, uh, and I'll read this last bit so people are caught up, because this is kind of a big deal related to Raven. Christ, Squeaky says, shaking his head. If I had any idea how little you knew about this shit, I never would have let you into my car. I thought you were some kind of serious CIC wet operations guy. Are you telling me you really didn't know about Raven? Yes, that's what I'm telling you. Okay, I'm gonna tell you this so you don't go out and cause any more trouble. Raven's packing a torpedo warhead that he boosted from an old Soviet nuke sub. It was a torpedo that was designed to take out a carrier battle group with one shot. A nuclear torpedo. You know that funny looking sidecar that Raven has on his Harley? Well, it's a hydrogen bomb, man. Armed and ready. The trigger's hooked up to EEG trodes embedded in his skull. If Raven dies, the bomb goes off. So when Raven comes into town, we do everything in our power to make the man feel welcome. Hiro is just gaping. YT has to step in on his behalf.
Okay, she says. Speaking for my partner and myself, we'll stay away from him.
So, Raven is a one man nuclear equipped nation with a tattoo on his forehead that says poor impulse control. I believe this paints sufficient image about our man Raven now. I love it. Don't worry, we're not done with Raven. He'll be back. He'll be back like the Terminator and twice as angry. Okay. Oh man, I think my voice is really quiet because it is not dinging much. My throat's kind of dodgy at the moment. There we go. Okay, so without further ado, I guess let's keep on going. Chapter 21. YT reckons she is going to spend all afternoon being a ramp turd. The surf is always up on the Harbor Freeway, which gets her from downtown to Compton, but the off-ramps into that neighborhood are so rarely used that 3-foot tumbleweeds grow in their potholes. And she's definitely not going to travel into Compton under her own power. She wants to poon something big and fast. She can't use the standard trick of ordering a pizza to her destination and then pooning the delivery boy as he roars past because none of the pizza chains deliver to this neighborhood. So she'll have to stop at the off-ramp and wait hours and hours for a ride. A ramp turd. She does not want to do this delivery at all, but the franchisee wants her to do it bad. Really bad. The amount of money he has offered her is so high, it's stupid. The package must be full of some kind of intense new drug. But that's not as weird as what happens next. She is cruising down the Harbor Freeway, approaching the desired off-ramp, having pooned a southbound semi. A quarter mile from the off-ramp, a bullet-pocked black Oldsmobile cruises past her, right turn signal flashing. He's going to exit. It's too good to be true. She poons the Oldsmobile. As she cruises down the ramp behind this flatulent sedan, she checks out the driver in his rearview mirror. It is the franchisee himself, the one who is paying her a totally stupid amount of money to do this job. By this point, she's more afraid of him than she is of Compton. He must be a psycho. He must be in love with her. This is all a twisted psycho love plot. But it's a little late now. She stays with him, looking for a way out of this burning and rotting neighborhood. They are approaching a big, nasty-looking mafia roadblock. He guns the gas pedal, headed straight for death. She can see the destination franchise ahead. At the last second, he whips the car around and squeals sideways to a halt. He couldn't have been more helpful. She unpoons as he's giving her this last little kick of energy and sails through the checkpoint at a safe and sane speed. The guards keep their guns pointed at the sky, swivel their heads to look at her butt as she rolls past them. The Compton Nova Cecilia franchise is a grisly scene. It is a jamboree of young mafia. These youths are even duller than the ones from the all-Mormon Desiree Burbclave. The boys are wearing tedious black suits. The girls are encrusted with pointless femininity. Girls can't even be in the young mafia. They have to be in the girls' auxiliary and serve macaroons on silver plates. Girls is too fine a word for these organisms, too high up the evolutionary scale. They aren't even chicks. She's going way too fast, so she kicks the board around sideways, plants pads, leans into it, skids to a halt, roiling up a wave of dust and grit that dulls the glossy shoes of several young mafia who are milling out front, nibbling dinky Italo treats and playing grown-up. It condenses on the white lace stockings of the young mafia proto-chicks. She falls off the board, appearing to catch her balance at the last moment. She stomps on the edge of the plank with one foot, and it bounces 4 feet into the air, spinning rapidly around its long axis, up into her armpit, where she clamps it tight under one arm. The spokes of the smart wheels all retract so that the wheels are barely larger than their hubs. She slaps the magnapoon into a handy socket on the bottom of the plank so that her gear is all in one handy package. Sorry.
YT, she says. Young, fast, and female. Where the fuck's Enzo?
The boys decide to get all mature on YT. Males of this age are preoccupied with snapping each other's underwear and drinking until they are in a coma. But around a female, they do the mature thing. It is hilarious. One of them steps forward slightly, interposing himself between YT and the nearest proto-chick. "Welcome to Nova Sicilia," he says. "Can I assist you in some way?" YT sighs deeply. She is a fully independent business person, and these people are trying to do a peer thing on her.
Delivery for one Enzo? You know, I can't wait to get out of this neighborhood.
"It's a good neighborhood now," says the Yoma says. Young Mafia. "You should stick around for a few minutes. Maybe you could learn some manners."
You should try surfing the Ventura at rush hour. Maybe you could learn your limitations.
The Yoma laughs like, "Okay, if that's how you want it." He gestures toward the door. "The man you want to talk to is in there. Whether he wants to talk to you or not, I'm not sure."
He fucking asked for me, YT says.
"He came across the country to be with us," the guy says, "and he seems pretty happy with us." All the other Yomas mumble and nod supportively.
Then why are you standing outside? YT asks, going inside.
Inside the franchise, things are startlingly relaxed. Uncle Enzo is in there, looking just like he does in the pictures, except bigger than YT expected. He's sitting at a desk playing cards with some other guys in funeral garb. He is smoking a cigar and nursing an espresso. Can't get too much stimulation, apparently. There's a whole Uncle Enzo portable support system in here. A traveling espresso machine has been set up on another desk. A cabinet sits next to it. Doors open to reveal a big foil bag of Italian roast water processed decaf and a box of Havana cigars. There's also a gargoyle in one corner, patched into a bigger than normal laptop, mumbling to himself. YT lifts her arm, allows the plank to fall into her hand. She slaps it down on top of an empty desk and approaches Uncle Enzo, unslinging the delivery from her shoulder. "Gino, please," Uncle Enzo says, nodding at the delivery. Gino steps forward to take it from her.
Need your signature on that,
YT says. For some reason, she does not refer to him as pal or bub. She's momentarily distracted by Gino. Suddenly, Uncle Enzo has come rather close to her, caught her right hand on his left hand. Her courier gloves have an opening on the back of the hand just big enough for his lips. He plants a kiss on YT's hand. It's warm and wet. Not slobbery and gross, not antiseptic and dry either. Interesting. This guy has confidence going for him. Christ, he's slick. Nice lips. Sort of firm, muscular lips, not gelatinous and blubbery like 15-year-old lips can be. Uncle Enzo has a very faint citrus and aged tobacco smell to him. Fully smelling it would involve standing pretty close to him. He's towering over her, standing at a respectable distance now, glinting at her through crinkly old guy eyes. Seems pretty nice. "I can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to meeting you, YT," he says.
Hi,
She says. Her voice sounds chirpier than she likes it to be, so she adds,
what's in the bag that's so fucking valuable anyway?
"Absolutely nothing," Uncle Enzo says. His smile is not exactly smug, more embarrassed, like what an awkward way to meet someone. "It all has to do with imageering." he says, spreading one hand dismissively. There are not many ways for a man like me to meet with a young girl that do not generate incorrect images in the media. It's stupid, but we pay attention to these things.
So what did you want to meet with me about? Got a delivery for me to make?
All the guys in the room laugh. The sound startles YT a little, reminds her that she is performing in front of a crowd. Her eyes flick away from Uncle Enzo for a moment. Uncle Enzo notices this. His smile gets infinitesimally narrower, and he hesitates for a moment. In that moment, all the other guys in the room stand up and head for the exit. You may not believe me, he says, but I simply wanted to thank you for delivering that pizza a few weeks ago.
Why shouldn't I believe you?
She asks. She is amazed to hear nice, sweet things coming out of her mouth. So is Uncle Enzo. I'm sure you, of all people, can come up with a reason.
So, she says, you having a nice day with all the young mafia?
Uncle Enzo gives her a look that says, Watch it, child. A second after, she gets scared. She starts laughing, because it's a put on. He's just giving her a hard time. He smiles, indicating that it's okay for her to laugh. YT can't remember when she's been so involved in a conversation. Why can't all people be like Uncle Enzo? Let me see, Uncle Enzo says, looking at the ceiling, scanning his memory banks. I know a few things about you. That you are 15 years old. You live in a burbclave in the valley with your mother.
I know a few things about you, too.
YT hazards. Uncle Enzo laughs. Not nearly as much as you think, I promise. Tell me, what does your mother think of your career? Nice of him to use the word career.
She's not totally aware of it, or doesn't want to know.
You're probably wrong, Uncle Enzo says. He says it cheerfully, though, not trying to cut her down or anything. You might be shocked at how well informed she is. This is my experience, anyway. What does your mother do for a living?
She works for the feds.
Uncle Enzo finds that richly amusing. And her daughter is delivering pizzas for Nova Sicilia. What does she do for the feds?
Some kind of thing where she can't really tell me in case I blab it. She has to take a lot of polygraph tests.
Uncle Enzo seems to understand this very well. Yes, a lot of Fed jobs are that way. There's an opportune silence.
It kind of freaks me out.
YT says. The fact that she works for the Feds?
The polygraph test. They put a thing around her arm to measure the blood pressure.
Oh boy. A sphygmomanometer. A sphygmomanometer. A sphygmomanometer. A sphygmomanometer. Uncle Enzo says crisply.
It leaves a bruise around her arm. For some reason, that kind of bothers me.
It should bother you.
And the house is bugged. So when I'm home, no matter what I'm doing, someone else is probably listening.
Well, I could certainly relate to that, Uncle Enzo says. They both laugh. I'm going to ask you a question that I've always wanted to ask a courier, Uncle Enzo says. I always watch you people through the windows of my limousine. In fact, when a courier poons me, I always tell Peter, my driver, not to give him the hard time. My question is, you are covered from head to toe in protective padding, so why don't you wear a helmet?
The suit's got a cervical airbag that blows up when you fall off the board, so you can bounce on your head. Besides, helmets feel weird. They say it doesn't affect your hearing, but it does.
You use your hearing quite a bit in your line of work.
Definitely, yeah.
Uncle Enzo is nodding. That's what I suspected. We felt the same way, the boys in my unit in Vietnam.
I heard you weren't to Vietnam, but
She stops, sensing danger. You thought it was hype? No, I went there. Could have stayed out if I'd wanted, but I volunteered.
you volunteered to go to Vietnam?
Uncle Enzo laughs. Yes, I did. The only boy in my family to do so.
Why?
I thought it would be safer than Brooklyn. YT laughs. A bad joke, he says. I volunteered because my father didn't want me to, and I wanted to piss him off.
Really?
Definitely. I spent years and years finding ways to piss him off. Dated black girls, grew my hair long, smoked marijuana. But the capstone, my ultimate achievement, even better than having my ear pierced, was volunteering for service in Vietnam. But I had to take extreme measures even then.
YT's eyes dart back and forth between Uncle Enzo's creased and leathery earlobes. In the left one, she just barely sees a tiny diamond stud. What do you mean, extreme measures?
Everyone knew who I was. Word gets around, you know. If I had volunteered for the regular army, I would have ended up stateside filling out forms, maybe even at Fort Hamilton, right there in Bensonhurst. To prevent that, I volunteered for special forces, did everything I could to get into a front line unit. He laughs. And it worked. Anyway, I'm rambling like an old man. I was trying to make a point about helmets.
Oh, yeah.
Our job was to go through the jungle making trouble for some slippery gentlemen carrying guns bigger than they were. Stealthy guys. And we depended on our hearing, too, just like you do. And you know what? We never wore helmets.
Same reason.
Exactly. Even though they didn't cover the ears, they really did something to your sense of hearing. I think I owe my life to going bareheaded.
That's really cool. That's really interesting.
You'd think they would have solved the problem by now.
Yeah, YT volunteers. Some things never change, I guess.
Uncle Enzo throws back his head and belly laughs. Usually, YT finds this kind of thing pretty annoying, but Uncle Enzo just seems like he's having a good time, not putting her down. YT wants to ask him how he went from the ultimate rebellion to running the family beeswax. She doesn't, but Uncle Enzo senses that it is the next natural subject of conversation.
Sometimes I wonder who'll come after me, he says. Oh, we have plenty of excellent people in the next generation. But after that, well, I don't know. I guess all old people must feel like the world is coming to an end.
You got millions of those young mafia types, YT says.
All destined to wear blazers and shuffle papers in suburbia. You don't respect those people very much, YT, because you're young and arrogant. But I don't respect them much either, because I'm old and wise.
This is a fairly shocking thing for Uncle Enzo to be saying, but YT doesn't feel shocked. It just seems like a reasonable statement coming from her reasonable pal, Uncle Enzo.
None of them would ever volunteer to go get his legs shot off in the jungle just to piss off his old man. They lack a certain fiber. They are lifeless and beaten down.
That's sad,
YT says. It feels better to say this than to trash them, which was her first inclination. Well, says Uncle Enzo, it is the well that begins the end of a conversation.
I was going to send you some roses, but you wouldn't really be interested in that, would you?
Oh, I wouldn't mind,
She says, sounding pathetically weak to herself.
Here's something better, since we are comrades in arms, he says.
He loosens his tie and collar, reaches down into his shirt, pulls out an amazingly cheap steel chain with a couple of stamped silver tags dangling from it.
These are my old dog tags, he says. Been carrying them around for years, just for the hell of it. I would be amused if you would wear them.
Trying to keep her knees steady, she puts the dog tags on. They dangle down onto her coverall.
Better put them inside,
Uncle Enzo says. She drops them down into the secret place between her breasts. They are still warm from Uncle Enzo.
Thanks.
It's just for fun, he says. But if you ever get into trouble and you show those dog tags to whoever it is that's giving you a bad time, then things will probably change very quickly.
Thanks, Uncle Enzo.
Take care of yourself. Be good to your mother. She loves you.
So the meeting with the infamous Uncle Enzo was rather different than we were led to expect. Knowing that he was a hardline mafia dude, he actually has soft spots. Alternatively, it's all PR. Who knows? Who could be really sure? One wonders. Alrighty. Chapter 22. As she steps out of the Nova Cecilia franchulette, a guy is waiting for her. He smiles, not without irony, and makes just a hint of a bow, sort of to get her attention. It's pretty ridiculous, but after being with Uncle Enzo for a while, she's definitely into it. So she doesn't laugh in his face or anything, just looks the other way and blows him off.
YT, got a job for you, he says. I'm busy, she says. Got other deliveries to make. You lie like a mattress, he says appreciatively. You know that gargoyle in there? He's patched into the Radix computer even as we speak, so we all know for a fact you don't got no jobs to do. Well, I can't take jobs from a customer, YT says. We're centrally dispatched. You have to go through the 1-800 number. Geez, what kind of fucking dickhead do you think I am? The guy says.
YT stops walking, turns, finally looks at the guy. He's tall, lean, black suit, black hair, and he's got a gnarly looking glass eye. Oh, I just realized I've been doing his voice wrong.
What happened to your eye? She says. Ice pick, Bayonne, 1985, he says. Any other questions? Sorry, man, I was just asking. Now, back to business. Because I don't have my head totally up my asshole, like you seem to assume, I am aware that all couriers are centrally dispatched through the 1-800 number. Now, we don't like 1-800 numbers and central dispatching. It's just a thing with us. We like to go person to person, the old-fashioned way. Like, on my mama's birthday, I don't pick up the phone and dial 1-800 call mom. I go there in person and give her a kiss on the cheek, okay? Now, in this case, we want you in particular. How come? Because we just love to deal with difficult little chicks ask too many fucking questions. So our gargoyle has already patched himself into the computer that Radix uses to dispatch couriers.
The man with the glass eye turns, rotating his head way, way around like an owl, and nods in the direction of the gargoyle. A second later, YT's personal phone rings.
Fucking pick it up,
He says.
What?
She says into the phone. A computer voice tells her that she is supposed to make a pickup in Griffith Park and deliver it to a Reverend Wayne's Pearly Gates franchise in Van Nuys.
If you want something delivered from point A to point B, why don't you just drive it down there yourselves? YT asks. Put it in one of those black Lincoln Town cars and just get it done. Because in this case, the something doesn't exactly belong to us. And the people at point A and point B, well, we aren't necessarily on the best of terms, mutually speaking. You want me to steal something? YT says.
The man with the glass eye is pained, wounded.
No, no, no. Kid, listen. We're the fucking mafia. We want to steal something. We already know how to do that, okay? We don't need a 15-year-old girl's help to get something stolen. What we are doing here is more of a covert operation. A spy thing.
Intel.
Intel. Yeah, a spy thing,
The man says, his tone of voice suggesting that he is trying to humor someone.
And the only way to get this operation to work is if we have a courier who can cooperate with us a little bit. So all that stuff with Uncle Enzo was fake, YT says. You're just trying to get all friendly with a courier. Oh, listen to this, says the man with the glass eye, genuinely amused. Yeah, like we have to go all the way to the top to impress a 15-year-old. Look, kid, there's a million couriers out there we could bribe to do this. We're going with you, again, because you have a personal relationship with our outfit. Well, what do you want me to do? Exactly what you would normally do at this juncture, the man says. Go to Griffith Park and make the pickup. That's it? Yeah, then make the delivery. But do us a favor and take I-5, okay? That's not the best way to do it. Do it anyway. Okay. Now, come on. We'll give you an escort out of this hellhole.
Sometimes, if the wind is going the right way and you get into the pocket of air behind a speeding 18-wheeler, you don't even have to poon it. The vacuum, like a mighty Hoover, sucks you in. You can stay there all day. But if you screw up, you suddenly find yourself alone and powerless in the left lane of a highway with a convoy of semis right behind you. Just as bad, if you give in to its power, it will suck you right into its mud flaps. You will become axle dressing, and no one will ever know. This is called the magic Hoover Poon. It reminds YT of of the way her life has been since the fateful night of the Hiro protagonist pizza adventure. Her poon cannot miss as she slingshots her way up the San Diego freeway. She can get a solid yank off even the lightest, trashiest plastic and aluminum Chinese econo box. People don't fuck with her. She has established her space on the pavement. She is going to get so much business now. She will have to sub a lot of work out to Roadkill. And sometimes, just to make important business arrangements, they will have to check into a motel somewhere, which is exactly what real business people do. Lately, YT has been trying to teach Roadkill how to give her a massage. But Roadkill can never get past her shoulder blades before he loses it and starts being Mr. Macho. Which, anyway, is kind of sweet. And anyway, you take what you can get. This is not the most direct route to Griffith Park by a long shot, but this is what the Mafia wants her to do. Take 405 all the way up into the valley, and then approach from that direction, which is the direction she'd normally come from. They're so paranoid, so professional. LAX goes by on her left. On her right, she gets a glimpse of the "you store it" where that dweeb, her partner, is probably goggled into his computer. She weaves through complex traffic flows around Hughes Airport, which is now a private outpost of Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong. Continues past the Santa Monica Airport, which just got bought out by Admiral Bob's Global Security. Cuts through the middle of Fedland, where her mother goes to work every day. Fedland used to be the VA hospital and a bunch of other federal buildings. Now it is condensed into a kidney-shaped lozenge that wraps around 405. It has a barrier around it, a perimeter fence put up by stringing chain-link fabric, concertina wire, heaps of rubble, and jersey barriers from one building to the next. All of the buildings in Fedland are big and ugly. Human beings mill around their plinths, wearing wool clothing the color of damp granite. They are scrawny and dark underneath the white majesty of the buildings. On the far side of the Fedland barrier, off to the right, she can see UCLA, which is now being jointly run by the Japanese and Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong, and a few big American corporations. People say that over there to the left, in Pacific Palisades, is a big building above the ocean where the Central Intelligence Corporation has its West Coast headquarters. Soon, like maybe tomorrow, she'll go up there, find that building, maybe just cruise past it and wave. She has great stuff to tell Hiro now. Great intel on Uncle Enzo. People would pay millions for it. But in her heart, she's already feeling the pangs of conscience. She knows that she cannot kiss and tell on the Mafia, not because she's afraid of them, because they trust her. They were nice to her. And who knows, it might turn into something. A better career than she could get with CIC. Not many cars are taking the off-ramp into Fedland. Her mother does it every morning, as do a bunch of other feds. But all feds go to work early and stay late. It's a loyalty thing with them. The feds have a fetish for loyalty. Since they don't make a lot of money or get a lot of respect, you have to prove you're personally committed and that you don't care about those trappings. Case in point, YT has been pooned onto the same cab all the way from LAX. It's got an Arab in the back seat. His burnous flutters in the wind from the open window. The air conditioning doesn't work, and LA cabbie doesn't make enough to buy chill, Freon, on the underground market. This is typical. Only the feds would make a visitor take a dirty, un-air-conditioned cab. Sure enough, the cab pulls onto the ramp marked United States. YT disengages and slaps her poon onto a valley-bound delivery truck. On top of the huge federal building, a bunch of feds with walkie-talkies and dark glasses and feds windbreakers lurk, aiming long lenses into the windshields of the vehicles coming up Wilshire Boulevard. If this were nighttime, she'd probably see a laser scanner playing over the barcode license plate of the taxi as it veers onto the US exit. YT's mom has told her all about these guys. They are the Executive Branch General Operational Command, EBGOC. The FBI, Federal Marshals, Secret Service, and Special Forces all claim some separate identities still, like the Army, Navy, and Air Force used to, but they're all under the command of EBGOC, EBGOC. They all do the same things, and they are more or less interchangeable. Outside of Fedland, everyone just knows them as the Feds. EBGOC claims the right to go anywhere, anytime, within the original borders of the United States of America, without a warrant or even a good excuse. But they only really feel at home here, in Fedland, staring down the barrel of a telephoto lens, shotgun microphone, or sniper rifle. The longer, the better. Down below them, the taxicab with the Arab in the back slows down to sublight speed and winds its way down a twisting slalom course of Jersey barriers with 50 caliber machine gun nests strategically placed here and there. It comes to a stop in front of an STD device, straddling an open pit where EBGOC boys stand with dogs and high-powered spotlights to look up its skirt for bombs or NBCI, nuclear biological chemical informational, agents in the undercarriage. Meanwhile, the driver gets out and pops the hood and trunk so that more feds can inspect them. Another fed leans against the window next to the Arab and grills him through the window. They say that in D.C., all the museums and the monuments have been concessioned out and turned into a tourist park that now generates about 10% of the government's revenue. The feds could run the concession themselves and probably keep more of the gross, but that's not the point. It's a philosophical thing, a back to basics thing. Government should govern. It's not in the entertainment industry, is it? Leave entertaining to industry weirdos, people who majored in tap dancing. Feds aren't like that. Feds are serious people. Poli-sci majors, student council presidents, debate club chairpersons. The kinds of people who have the grit to wear a dark wool suit and a tightly buttoned collar, even when the temperature has greenhoused up to 110 degrees and the humidity is thick enough to stall a jumbo jet. The kinds of people who feel most at home on the dark side of a one-way mirror. Geez Louise, these chapters aren't giving me many breaks to take a sip of water conveniently. Fortunately, I've got a couple coming up where there'll be one or two roughly halfway through or so. Oh, alrighty. Wow, it's only half an hour in. We're just banging chapters out. I'm gonna have to extend how far I'm gonna read. That's perfect. I've been meaning to make up for lost time, but I do have things I have to do at like 2, so, or in an hour and a half, I should say. So we'll see. We'll see where we're at by the time I get to chapter 26. If I still have like an hour left or half an hour left, I will keep on going for another chapter or two. Oh, right. And we get into the Mesopotamian stuff. Babylonian stuff, rather. Well, and I think Mesopotamian. Sure. Sure, I know my ancient geography and history, definitely. Okay, moving right along here. Chapter 23. Sometimes, to prove their manhood, boys of about YT's age will drive into the eastern end of the Hollywood Hills, into Griffith Park, pick the road of their choosing, and simply drive through it. Making it through there unscathed is a lot like counting coup on a high plains battlefield. Simply having come that close to danger makes you more of a man. By definition, all they ever see are the through streets. If you are driving into Griffith Park for some hijinks and you see a no outlet sign, you know that it is time to shift your dad's Accord into reverse and drive it backward all the way home, revving the engine way past the end of the tachometer. Naturally, as soon as YT enters the park, following the road she was told to follow, she sees a no outlet sign. YT's not the first courier to take a job like this, and so she has heard about the place she is going. It is a narrow canyon, accessed only by this one road, and down in the bottom of the canyon, a new gang lives. Everyone calls them the Falabalas, because that's how they talk to each other. They have their own language, and it sounds like babble. Right now, the important thing is not to think about how stupid this is. Making the right decision is, priority-wise, down there along with getting enough niacin and writing a thank you letter to Grandma for the nice pearl earrings. The only important thing is not to back down. A row of machine gun nests marks the border of Falabala territory. It seems like overkill to YT. But then, she's never been in a conflict like with the Mafia either. She plays it cool, idles toward the barrier at maybe 10 miles an hour. This is where she'll freak out and get scared if she's going to. She's holding aloft a color-faxed Radix document featuring the cybernetic Radish logo, proclaiming that she really is here to pick up an important delivery. Honest. It'll never work with these guys. But it does. A big, gnarled up coil of razor ribbon is pulled out of her way, just like that, and she glides through without slowing down. And that's when she knows it's going to be fine. These people are just doing business here, just like anyone else. She doesn't have to skate far into the canyon. Thank God. She goes around a few turns, into a kind of an open flat area surrounded by trees, and finds herself in what looks like an open-air insane asylum. Or a Mooney festival, or something. A couple of dozen people are here. None of them have been taking care of themselves at all. They are all wearing the ragged remains of what used to be pretty decent clothing. Half a dozen of them are kneeling on the pavement with their hands clenched tightly together, mumbling to unseen entities. On the trunk lid of a dead car, they've set up an old junked computer terminal, just a dark monitor screen with a big spiderweb crack in it, like someone bounced a coffee mug off the glass. A fat man with red suspenders dangling around his knees is sliding his hands up and down the keyboard, whacking the keys randomly, talking out loud in a meaningless babble. A couple of the others stand behind him, peeking over his shoulder and around his body, and sometimes they try to horn in on it, but he shoves them out of the way. There's also a crowd of people clapping their hands, their bodies, swaying their bodies, and singing The Happy Wanderer. They're really into it, too. YT hasn't seen such childlike glee on anyone's face since the first time she let Roadkill take her clothes off. But this is a different kind of childlike glee that does not look right on a bunch of 30-something people with dirty hair. And finally, there is a guy that YT dubs the High Priest. He's wearing a formerly white lab coat, bearing the logo of some company in the Bay Area. He's sacked out in the back of a dead station wagon, but when YT enters the area, he jumps up and runs toward her in a way that she can't help but find a little threatening. But compared to these others, he seems almost like a regular, healthy, fit, demented, bush-dwelling psychotic.
You here to pick up the suitcase, right? I'm here to pick up something. I don't know what it is, she says.
He goes over to one of the dead cars, unlocks the hood, pulls out an aluminum briefcase. It looks exactly like the one Squeaky took out of the BMW last night.
Here's your delivery,
he says, striding toward her. She backs away from him instinctively.
I understand, he says. I'm a scary creep.
He puts it on the ground, puts his foot on it, gives it a shove. It slides across the pavement to YT,
bouncing off the occasional rock. "There's no hurry on this delivery," he says. "Would you like to stay and have a drink? We've got Kool-Aid." "I'd love to," YT says, "but my diabetes is acting up real bad." "Well, then you can just stay and be a guest of our community. We have a lot of wonderful things to tell you about. Things that could really change your life." "Do you have anything in writing? Something I could take with me?" "Gee, I'm afraid we don't. Why don't you stay? You seem like a really nice person." "Sorry, Jack, but you must be confusing me with a bimbo," YT says. "Thanks for the suitcase. I'm out of here."
YT starts digging at the pavement with one foot, building up speed as fast as she can. On her way out, she passes by a young woman with a shaved head, dressed in the dirty and haggard remains of a Chanel knockoff. As YT goes by her, she smiles vacantly, sticks out her hand, and waves, and waves. "Hi," she says. "Bamazuna la amupagolu na me abadu."
"Yo,"
YT says. A couple of minutes later, she's pooning her way up I-5, headed into Valley Land. She's a little freaked out. Her timing is off. She's taking it easy. A tune keeps running through her head. The Happy Wanderer. It's driving her crazy. A large black blur keeps pulling alongside her. It would be a tempting target, so large and ferrous, if it were going a little faster. But she can make better time than this barge, even when she's taking it slow. The driver's side window of the black car rolls down. It's the guy, Jason. He's sticking his whole head out of the window to look back at her, driving blind. The wind at 50 miles per hour does not ruffle his firmly gelled razor cut. He smiles. He has an imploring look about him, the same look that Roadkill gets. He points suggestively at his rear quarter panel. What the hell? The last time she pooned this guy, he took her exactly where she was going. YT detaches from the Acura she's been hitched to for the last half mile, swings it over to Jason's fat olds. And Jason takes her off the freeway and onto Victory Boulevard, headed for Van Nuys, which is exactly right. But after a couple of miles, he swings the wheel sharply right and screeches into the parking lot of a ghost mall, which is wrong. Right now, nothing's parked in the lot but an 18-wheeler, motor running. Salducci Brothers Moving and Storage, painted on the sides. Come on, Jason says, getting out of his Oldsmobile. You don't want to waste any time.
"Screw you, asshole," she says, reeling in her poon.
Looking back toward the boulevard for some promising westbound traffic. Whatever this guy has in mind, it is probably unprofessional. Young lady, says another voice, an older and more arresting sort of voice, it's fine if you don't like Jason, but your pal, Uncle Enzo, needs your help. Oh,
Gosh darn it. "Young lady," says another voice, an older and more arresting sort of voice. "It's fine if you don't like Jason, but your pal, Uncle Enzo, needs your help."
a door on the back of the semi has opened up. A man in a black suit is standing there. Behind him, the interior of the semi is brightly lit up. Halogen light glares off the man's slick hairdo. Even in this backlighting, she can tell it is the man with the glass eye.
"What do you want?" she says. "What I want," he says, looking her up and down, "and what I need are different things. Right now I'm working, see? Which means that what I want is not important. What I need is for you to get into this truck along with your skateboard and that suitcase."
Then he adds,
"Am I getting through to you?"
he asks the question almost rhetorically, like he presumes the answer is no. He's for real, Jason says, as though YT must be hanging on his opinion.
"Well, there you have it,"
The man with the glass eye says. YT is supposed to be on her way to a Reverend Wayne's Pearly Gates franchise. If she screws up this delivery, that means she's double-crossing God, who may or may not exist, and in any case, who is capable of forgiveness. The Mafia definitely exists, and hews to a higher standard of obedience.
She hands her stuff, the plank and the aluminum case, up to the man with the glass eye, then vaults up into the back of the semi, ignoring his proffered hand. He recoils, holds up his hand, looks at it to see if there's something wrong with it. By the time her feet leave the ground, the truck is already moving. By the time the door is pulled shut behind her, they have already pulled onto the boulevard.
Just gotta run a few tests on this delivery of yours, the man with the glass eye says. Ever think of introducing yourself?
YT says.
Nah, he says. People always forget names. You can just think of me as that one guy, you know?
YT is not really listening. She is checking out the inside of the truck. The trailer of this rig consists of a single long, skinny room. YT has just come in through its only entrance. At the end of this room, a couple of mafia guys are lounging around, the way they always do. Most of the room is taken up by electronics. Big electronics.
Going to just do some computer stuff, you know, he says,
handing the briefcase over to a computer guy. YT knows he's a computer guy because he has long hair in a ponytail, and he's wearing jeans, and seems gentle.
Hey, if anything happens to that, my ass is grass,
YT says. She's trying to sound tough and brave, but it's a hollow act in these circumstances. The man with the glass eye is, like, shocked.
What do you think I am, some kind of incredibly stupid dickhead? He says. Shit, that's just what I need, trying to explain to Uncle Enzo how I managed to get his little bunny rabbit shot in the kneecaps.
It's a non-invasive procedure,
the computer guy says in a placid, liquid voice. The computer guy rotates the case around in his hand a few times just to get a feel for it. Then he slides it into a large, open-ended cylinder that is resting on the top of a table. The walls of the cylinder are a couple of inches thick. Frost appears to be growing on this thing. Mystery gases continue to slide off of it, like teaspoons of milk dropped into turbulent water. The gases plunge out across the table and drop to the floor, where they make a little carpet of fog that flows and blooms around their shoes. When the computer guy has it in place, he yanks his hand back from the cold. Then he puts on a pair of computer goggles. That's all there is to it. He just sits there for a few minutes. YT is not a computer person, but she knows that somewhere behind the cabinets and doors in the back of this truck, there's a big computer doing a lot of things right now.
It's like a CAT scanner,
the man with the glass eye says, using the same hushed tone of voice as a sportscaster in a golfing tournament,
but it reads everything, you know,
he says, rotating his hands impatiently in all-encompassing circles.
How much does it cost? I don't know. What is it called? Doesn't really have a name yet. Well, who made it? We made the goddamn thing,
the man with the glass eye says,
just like in the last couple of weeks. What for? You're asking too many questions. Look, you're a cute kid. I mean, you're a hell of a chick. You're a knockout. But don't go thinking you're too important at this stage.
At this stage? Don't worry, I'll get a consistent voice for the glass-eyed guy. I was sort of going for a pseudo Joe Pesci and then tried to back off, because I can't really do that very well. Not for long. So I'm going to just make him sound like a psychopath. It's no big deal. That's easy. With hints of Joe Pesci. So I guess a less Joe Pesci like Joe Pesci? I don't know. uh... So, things are happening. She has brought a package to the Mafia from our good friends, the Falabala Gang, who are clearly, or probably, well, there's something going on there. I don't want to do spoilers. People are probably making connections already. Those of you who haven't actually read the book yet, if you have read the book, great, you know what's coming, and I hope I'm doing it justice. I hope you're having fun. If you haven't read the book, I hope you're having fun, and I hope I'm doing it justice. That assumes anyone here is tuning in whatsoever, which would be great. Alrighty. Chapter 24. Hiro is in his 20 by 30 at the U Store-it. He is spending a little time in reality, as per the suggestion of his partner. The door is open so that ocean breezes and jet exhaust can blow through. All the furniture, the futons, the cargo pallet, the experimental cinder block furniture, has been pushed up against the walls. He is holding a 1 meter long piece of heavy rebar with tape wrapped around one end to make a handle. The rebar approximates a katana, but it is very much heavier. He calls it redneck katana. He is in the kendo stance, barefoot. He should be wearing voluminous ankle-length culottes and a heavy indigo tunic, which is the traditional uniform, but instead he is wearing jockey shorts. Sweat is running down his smoothly muscled cappuccino back and exploring his cleavage. Blisters the size of green grapes are forming on the ball of his left foot. Hiro's heart and lungs are well developed, and he has been blessed with unusually quick reflexes, but he is not intrinsically strong, the way his father was. Even if he were intrinsically strong, working with the redneck katana would be very difficult. He is full of adrenaline, his nerves are shot, and his mind is cluttered up with free-floating anxiety, floating around on an ocean of generalized terror. He is shuffling back and forth down the 30-foot axis of the room. From time to time he will accelerate, raise the redneck katana over his head until it is pointed backward, then bring it swiftly down, snapping his wrists at the last moment so that it comes to a stop in midair. Then he says, "Next." Theoretically. In fact, the redneck katana is difficult to stop once it gets moving, but it's good exercise. His forearms look like bundles of steel cables. Almost. Well, they will soon anyway. The Nipponese don't go in for this nonsense about follow-through. If you strike a man on the top of his head with a katana, you do not make any effort to stop the blade. And do not make any effort to stop the blade, it will divide his skull and probably get hung up in his collarbone or his pelvis. And then you will be out there in the middle of the medieval battlefield with a foot on your late opponent's face, trying to work the blade loose as his best friend comes running up to you with a certain vengeful gleam in his eye. So the plan is to snap the blade to a full stop just after the impact, maybe crease his brain pan an inch or two, then whip it out and look for another samurai. Hence, next. He has been thinking about what happened earlier tonight with Raven, which pretty much rules out sleep, and this is why he is practicing with the redneck katana at 3 in the morning. He knows he was totally unprepared. The spear just came at him. He slapped at it with the blade. He happened to slap it at the right time, and it missed him. But he did this almost absent-mindedly. Maybe that's how great warriors do it. Carelessly, not racking their minds with the consequences. Maybe he's flattering himself. The sound of a helicopter has been getting louder for some minutes now. Even though Hiro lives right next to the airport, this is unusual. They're not supposed to fly right near LAX. It raises evident safety questions. It doesn't stop getting louder until it is very loud, and at that point, the helicopter is hovering a few feet above the parking lot, right out in front of Hiro and Vitali's 20 by 30. It's a nice one, a corporate jet chopper, dark green with subdued markings. Hiro suspects that in a brighter light he would be able to make out the logo of a defense contractor, most likely General Jim's defense system. A pale-faced white man with a very high forehead cum bald spot jumps out of the chopper, looking a lot more athletic than his face and general demeanor would lead you to expect, and jogs across the parking lot directly toward Hiro. This is the kind of guy Hiro remembers from when his dad was in the army.
Not the grisly veterans of legends and movies, just sort of regular 35-year-old guys rattling around in bulky uniforms. He's a major. His name, sewn onto his BDUs, is Clem.
Hero protagonist?
The same.
Juanita sent me to pick you up. Said you'd recognize the name.
I recognize the name, but I don't really work for Juanita.
She says you do now.
Well, that's nice, Hiro says. So I guess it's kind of urgent?
I think that would be a fair assumption,
Major Clem says. Can I spare a few minutes? Because I've been working out and I need to run next door. Major Clem looks next door. The next logo down the strip is The Rest Stop.
The situation is fairly static. You could spare 5 minutes,
Major Clem says. Hiro has an account with the Rest Stop. To live at the U Store-It, you sort of have to have an account. So he gets to bypass the front office where the attendant waits by the cash register. He shoves his membership card into a slot, and a computer screen lights up with 3 choices. M, F, Nursery, unisex. Hiro slaps the M button. Then the screen changes to a menu of 4 choices.
Our special limited facilities. Thrifty but sanitary. Standard facilities. Just like home. Maybe just a little better. Prime facilities. A gracious place for the discriminating patron. The Lavatory Grand Royale.
He has to override a well-worn reflex to stop himself from automatically punching special limited facilities, which is what he and all the other U Store-It residents always use. Almost impossible to go in there and not come in contact with someone else's bodily fluids. Not a pretty sight. Not at all gracious. Instead, what the fuck? Juanita's going to hire him, right? He slams the button for Lavatory Grand Royale. Never been here before. It's like something on the top floor of a luxury high-rise casino in Atlantic City, where they put semi-retarded adults from South Philly after they've blundered into the mega jackpot. It's got everything that a dim-witted pathological gambler would identify with luxury. Gold-plated fixtures, lots of injection-molded pseudo-marble, velvet drapes, and a butler. None of the U Store-It residents ever use the Lavatory Grand Royale. The only reason it's here is that this place happens to be across the street from LAX. Singaporean CEOs who want to have a shower and take a nice leisurely crap with all the sound effects without having to hear and smell other travelers doing the same can come here and put it all on their corporate travel card. The butler is a 30-year-old Central American whose eyes look a little funny, like they've been closed for the last several hours. He's just throwing some improbably thick towels over his arm as Hiro bursts in. Gotta get in and out in 5 minutes, Hiro says. You want shave? The butler says. He paws at his own cheeks suggestively, unable to peg Hiro's ethnic group. Love to. No time. He peels off his jockey shorts, tosses his swords onto the crushed velvet sofa, and steps into the marbleized amphitheater of the shower stall. Hot water hits him from all directions at once. There's a knob on the wall so you can choose your favorite temperature. Afterward, he'd like to take a dump, read some of those glossy phone book-sized magazines next to the high-tech shitter, but he's got to get going. He dries himself off with a fresh towel the size of a circus tent, yanks on some loose drawstring slacks and a t-shirt, throws some Kong bucks at the butler, and runs out, girding himself with the swords. It's a short flight, mostly because the military pilot is happy to eschew comfort in favor of speed. The chopper takes off at a shallow angle, keeping it low so it won't get sucked into any jumbo jets, and as soon as the pilot gets room to maneuver, he whips the tail around, drops the nose, and lets the rotor yank them onward and upward across the basin, toward the sparsely lit mass of the Hollywood Hills. But they stop short of the hills and end up on the roof of a hospital, part of the Mercy chain, which technically makes this Vatican airspace. So far, this has Juanita written all over it.
Neurology ward,
Major Clem says, delivering this string of nouns like an order.
Fifth floor, east wing, room 564.
The man in the hospital bed is Defivid. Extremely thick, wide leather straps have been stretched across the head and foot of the bed. Leather cuffs, lined with fluffy sheepskin, are attached to the straps. These cuffs have been fastened around Defivid's wrists and ankles. He's wearing a hospital gown that has mostly fallen off. The worst thing is that his eyes don't always point in the same direction. He's hooked up to an EKG that's charting his heartbeat, and even though Hiro's not a doctor, he can see it's not a regular pattern. It beats too fast. Then it doesn't beat at all. Then an alarm sounds, then it starts beating again. He has gone completely blank. His eyes are not seeing anything. At first, Hiro thinks that his body is limp and relaxed. Getting closer, he sees that Defivid is taut and shivering, slick with perspiration. "We put in a temporary pacemaker," a woman says. Hiro turns. It's a nun who also appears to be a surgeon. "How long has he been in convulsions?" "His ex-wife called us in, said she was worried." "Juanita." "Yes. When the paramedics arrived, he had fallen out of his chair at home and was convulsing on the floor. You can see a bruise, here, where we think his computer fell off the table and hit him in the ribs. So, to protect him from further damage, we put him in 4 points. But for the last half hour, he's been like this, like his whole body is in fibrillation. If he stays this way, we'll take the restraints off."
Was he wearing goggles?
"I don't know. I can check for you."
But you think this happened while he was goggled into his computer?
"I really don't know, sir. All I know is he's got such a bad cardiac arrhythmia that we had to implant a temporary pacemaker right there on his office floor. We gave him some seizure medication, which didn't work. Put him on some downers to calm him, which worked slightly. Put his head on into various pieces of imaging machinery to find out what the problem was. The jury is still out on that."
Well, I'm going to go look at his house, Hiro says. The doctor shrugs. Let me know when he comes out of it, Hiro says. The doctor doesn't say anything to this. For the first time, Hiro realizes that Defivid's condition may not be temporary. As Hiro is stepping out into the hallway, Defivid speaks. "Ene emma ni agi agi ni mu ma madam ene emma an ki ga agi agi." Hiro turns around and looks. Defivid has gone limp in the restraints, seems relaxed, half asleep. He is looking at Hiro through half-closed eyes. "Ene em dam gal nun na agi agi. Ene em mu mu un abzu ka agi agi." Defivid's voice is deep and placid, with no trace of stress. The syllables roll off his tongue like drool. As Hiro walks down the hallway, he can hear Defivid talking all the way. "Ige en nuge en nuge esura turtura lura zemen." Hiro gets back into the chopper. They cruise up the middle of Beechwood Canyon, headed straight for the Hollywood sign. Defivid's house has been transfigured by light. It's at the end of its own little road, at the summit of a hill. The road has been blocked off by a squat, frog-like jeep thing from General Jim's. Saturated red and blue light is sweeping and pulsing out of it. Another helicopter is above the house, supported on a swirling column of radiance. Soldiers creep up and down the property, carrying handheld searchlights. "We took the precaution of securing the area," Major Clem says. At the fringes of all this light, Hiro can see the dead organic colors of the hillside. The soldiers are trying to push it back with their searchlights, trying to burn it away. He is about to bury himself in it, become a single muddy pixel in some airline passenger's window, plunging into the biomass. Defivid's laptop is on the floor next to the table where he liked to work. It is surrounded by medical debris. In the middle of this, Hiro finds Defivid's goggles, which either fell off when he hit the floor or were stripped off by the paramedics. Hiro picks up the goggles. As he brings them up toward his eyes, he sees the image, a wall of black and white static. Defivid's computer has snow crashed. He closes his eyes and drops the goggles. You can't get hurt by looking at a bitmap. Or can you? The house is a sort of modernist castle with a high turret on one end. Defivid and Hiro and the rest of the hackers used to go up there with a case of beer and a hibachi and just spend the whole night, eating jumbo shrimp and crab legs and oysters and washing them down with beer. Now it's deserted, of course, just the hibachi, which is rusted and almost buried in gray ash, like an archaeological relic. Hiro has pinched one of Defivid's beers from the fridge, and he sits up here for a while, in what used to be his favorite place, drinking his beer slowly, like he used to, reading stories in the lights. The old central neighborhoods are packed in tight below an eternal organic haze. In other cities, you breathe industrial contaminants, but in LA, you breathe amino acids. The hazy sprawl is ringed and netted with glowing lines, like hot wires in a toaster. At the outlet of the canyon, it comes close enough that the light sharpens and breaks up into stars, arches, glowing letters. Streams of red and white corpuscles throb down highways to the fuzzy logic of intelligent traffic lights. Farther away, spreading across the basin, a million sprightly logos smear into solid arcs, like geometric points merging into curves. To either side of the franchise ghettos, the low glow dwindles across a few shallow layers of development and into a surrounding dimness that is burst here and there by the blaze of security spotlight in someone's backyard. The franchise and the virus work on the same principle. What thrives in one place will thrive in another. You just have to find a sufficiently virulent business plan, condense it into a three-ring binder, its DNA, Xerox it, and embed it in the fertile lining of a well-traveled highway, preferably one with a left turn lane. Then the growth will expand until it runs up against its property lines. In olden times, you'd wander down to Mom's Cafe for a bite to eat and a cup of joe, and you would feel right at home. It worked just fine if you never left your hometown. Sorry, text is marred here. It worked just fine if you never left your hometown. But if you went to the next town over, everyone would look up and stare at you when you came in the door, and the blue plate special would be something you didn't recognize. If you did enough traveling, you'd never feel at home anywhere. But when a businessman from New Jersey goes to Dubuque, he knows he can walk into a McDonald's and no one will stare at him. He can order without having to look at the menu, and the food will always taste the same. McDonald's is home, condensed into a three-ring binder and Xeroxed. No surprises is the motto of the franchise ghetto, its good housekeeping seal, subliminally blazoned on every sign and logo that make up the curves and grids of light that outline the basin. The people of America, who live in the world's most surprising and terrible country, take comfort in that motto. Follow the low glow outward to where the growth is enfolded into the valleys and the canyons, and you find the land of the refugees. They have fled from the true America, the America of atomic bombs, scalpings, hip-hop, chaos theory, cement overshoes, snake handlers, spree killers, spacewalks, buffalo jumps, drive-bys, cruise missiles, Sherman's March, gridlock, motorcycle gangs, and bungee jumping. They have parallel parked their bimbo boxes in identical computer-designed burbclave street patterns and secreted themselves in symmetrical street ugh, and secreted themselves not secreted, secreted themselves in symmetrical sheetrock shitholes with vinyl floors and ill-fitting woodwork and no sidewalks. Vast house farms out in the low-glow wilderness, a culture medium for a medium culture. The only ones left in the city are street people, feeding off debris. Immigrants, thrown out like shrapnel from the destruction of the Asian powers. Young bohos, and the techno-media priesthood of Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong. Young, smart people like Defivid and Hiro, who take the risk of living in the city because they like stimulation, and they know they can handle it. YT. Oh, oops. Chapter 25. YT can't really tell where they are. It's clear that they're stuck in traffic. It's not like this is predictable or anything.
YT must get underway now.
She announces. No reaction for a sec. Then the hacker guy sits back in his chair, stares out through his goggles, ignoring the 3D compu display, taking in a nice view of the wall. Okay, he says. Quick as a mongoose, the man with the glass eye darts in, yanks the aluminum case out of the cryogenic cylinder, tosses it to YT. Meantime, one of the lounging around mafia guys is opening the back door of the truck, giving them all a nice view of a traffic jam on the boulevard.
One other thing,
The man with the glass eye says, and shoves an envelope into one of YT's multitudinous pockets.
What's that?
YT says. He holds up his hands self-protectively.
Don't worry, it's just a little something. Now get going.
He motions at the guy who's holding her plank. The guy turns out to be fairly hip because he just throws the plank. It lands at an odd angle on the floor between them. But the spokes have long ago seen the floor coming, calculated all the angles, extended and flexed themselves like the legs and feet of a basketball player coming back to earth from a monster dunk. The plank lands on its feet, banks this way, then that, as it regains its balance, then steers itself right up to YT and stops beside her. She stands on it, kicks a few times, flies out the back door of the semi, and onto the hood of a Pontiac that was following them much too closely. Its windshield makes a nice surface to bank off of, and she gets her direction neatly reversed by the time she hits the pavement. The owner of the Pontiac is honking self-righteously, but there's no way he can chase her down because traffic is totally stopped. YT is the only thing for miles around that is actually capable of movement, which is the whole point of couriers in the first place. The Reverend Wayne's Pearly Gates number 1106 is a pretty big one. Its low serial number implies great age. It was built long ago when land was cheap and lots were big. The parking lot is half full. Usually all you see at a Reverend Wayne's are old beaters with wacky Spanish expressions nail polished on the rear bumpers. The rides of Central American evangelicals who have come up north to get decent jobs and escape the relentlessly Catholic style of their homelands. This lot also has a lot of just plain old regular bimbo boxes with license plates from all the burbclaves. Traffic is moving a little better on this stretch of the boulevard, and so YT comes into the lot at a pretty good clip, takes one or two orbits around the franchise to work off her speed. A smooth parking lot is hard to resist when you're going fast, and to look at it from a slightly less juvenile point of view, it's a good idea to scope things out, to be familiar with your environment. YT learns that this parking lot is linked with that of a chop shop franchise next door. We turn any vehicle into cash in minutes, which in turn flows into the lot of a neighboring strip mall.
A dedicated thrasher could probably navigate from LA to New York by coasting from one parking lot into the next. This parking lot makes popping and skittering noises in some areas. Looking down, she sees that behind the franchise, near the dumpster, the asphalt is strewn with small glass vials, like the one that Squeaky was looking at last night. They are scattered about like cigarette butts behind a bar. When the footpads of her wheels pass over these vials, they tiddlywink out from underneath and skitter across the pavement. People are lined up at the door, waiting to get in. YT jumps the line and goes inside. The front room of the Reverend Wayne's pearly gates is, of course, like all the others. A row of padded vinyl chairs where worshippers can wait for their number to be called, with a potted plant at each end, and a table strewn with primeval magazines. A toy corner where kids can kill time, reenacting imaginary cosmic battles in injection molded plastic. A counter done up in fake wood, so it looks like something from an old church. Behind the counter, a pudgy high school babe, dishwater blonde hair that has been worked over pretty good with a curling iron, blue metal flake eyeshadow, an even coat of red makeup covering her broad, gelatinous cheeks, a flimsy sort of choir robe thrown over her t-shirt. When YT comes in, she is right in the middle of a transaction. She sees YT right away, but no three-ring binder anywhere in the world allows you to flag or fail in the middle of a transaction. Stymied, YT sighs and crosses her arms to convey impatience. In any other business establishment, she'd already be raising hell and marching around behind the counter as if she owned the place. But this is a church, damn it. There's a little rack along the front of the counter bearing religious tracts, free for the taking. Donation requested. Several slots on the rack are occupied by the Reverend Wayne's famous bestseller, How America Was Saved from Communism. Elvis Shot JFK. She pulls out the envelope that the man with the glass eye stuck into her pocket. It is not thick and soft enough to contain a lot of cash, unfortunately. It contains half a dozen snapshots. All of them feature Uncle Enzo. He is on the broad, flat, horseshoe driveway of a large house, larger than any house YT has ever seen with her own two eyes. He is standing on a skateboard, or falling off a skateboard, or coasting slowly, arms splayed wildly out to the sides, chased by nervous security personnel. A piece of paper is wrapped around the pictures. It says, YT, thanks for your help. As you can see from these pictures, I tried to train for this assignment, but it's going to take some practice. Your friend, Uncle Enzo. YT wraps the pictures up just the way they were, puts them back in her pocket, stifles a smile, returns to business matters. The girl in the robe is still performing her transaction behind the counter. The transactee is a stocky Spanish-speaking woman in an orange dress. The girl types some stuff into the computer. The customer snaps her Visa card down on the fake wood altar top. It sounds like a rifle shot. The girl pries the card up using her inch-long fingernails, a dicey and complicated operation that makes YT think of insects climbing out of their egg sacs. She performs the sacrament, swiping the card through its electromagnetic slot with a carefully modulated sweep of the arm, as though tearing back a veil, handing over the slip, mumbling that she needs a signature and daytime phone number. She might as well have been speaking Latin, but that's okay, since this customer is familiar with the liturgy and signs and numbers it before the words are fully spoken. Then it just remains for the word from on high. But computers and communications are awfully good these days, and it usually doesn't take longer than a couple of seconds to perform a charge card verification. The little machine beeps out its approval code, heavenly tunes sing out from tinny speakers, and a wide pair of pearlescent doors in the back of the room swing majestically open. Thank you for your donation, the girl says, slurring the words together into a single syllable. The customer stomps toward the double doors, drawn in by hypnotic organ strains. The interior of the chapel is weirdly colored, illuminated partly by fluorescent fixtures wedged into the ceiling, and partly by colored light boxes that simulate stained glass windows. The largest of these, shaped like a fattened Gothic arch, is bolted to the back wall, above the altar, and features a blazing trinity: Jesus, Elvis, and the Reverend Wayne. Jesus gets top billing. The worshipper is not a half a dozen steps into the place before she thuds down on her knees in the middle of the aisle and begins to speak in tongues. Aria, Aria, Ar Isa, Vene, Amir, Ia, Isa, Vena, Amir, Ia, Sar, Ia. The doors swing shut again. Just a sec, the girl says, looking at YT, a little nervously. She goes around the corner and stands in the middle of the toy area, inadvertently getting the hem of her robe caught up in a Ninja Raft Warrior's battle module, and knocks on the door of the potty.
Busy,
Says a man's voice from the other side of the door. The courier's here, the girl says.
I'll be right out,
The man says, more quietly. And he really is right out. YT does not perceive any waiting time, no zipping up of the fly or washing of the hands. He is wearing a black suit with a clerical collar, pulling a lightweight black robe on over that as he emerges into the toy area, crushing little action figures and fighter aircraft beneath his black shoes. His hair is black and well greased, with individual strands of gray, and he wears wire-rimmed bifocals with a subtle brownish tint. He has very large pores. And by the time he gets close enough that YT can see all of these details, she can also smell him. She smells Old Spice, plus a strong whiff of vomit on his breath. But it's not boozy vomit.
Give me that,
He says, and yanks the aluminum briefcase from her hand. YT never lets people do that. You have to sign for it, she says. But she knows it's too late. If you don't get them to sign first, you're screwed. You have no power, no leverage. You're just a brat on a skateboard. Which is why YT never lets people yank deliveries out of her hand. But this guy is a minister, for God's sake. She just didn't reckon on it. He yanked it out of her hand, and now he runs with it back to his office. I could sign for it, the girl says. She looks scared. More than that, she looks sick. It has to be him personally, YT says. Reverend Dale T. Thorpe. Now she's done being shocked and starting to be pissed, so she just follows him right into his office. You can't go in there, the girl says, but she says it dreamily, sadly, like this whole thing is already half forgotten. YT opens the door. The Reverend Dale T. Thorpe sits at his desk. The aluminum briefcase is open in front of him. It is filled with the same complicated bit of business that she saw the other night, after the Raven thing. The Reverend Dale T. Thorpe seems to be leashed by the neck to this device. No, actually, he is wearing something on a string around his neck. He was keeping it under his clothes, the way YT keeps Uncle Enzo's dog tags. He has pulled it out now and shoved it into a slot inside the aluminum case. It appears to be a laminated ID card with a barcode on it. Now he pulls the card out and lets it dangle down his front. YT cannot tell whether he has noticed her. He is typing on the keyboard, punching away with 2 fingers, missing letters, doing it again. Then motors and servos inside the aluminum case whir and shudder. The Reverend Dale T. Thorpe has unsnapped one of the little vials from its place in the lid and inserted it into a socket next to the keyboard. It is slowly drawn down inside the machine. The vial pops back out again. The red plastic cap is emitting grainy red light. It has little LEDs built into it, and they are spelling out numbers, counting down seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Reverend Dale T. Thorpe holds the vial up to his left nostril. When the LED counter gets down to 0, it hisses, like air coming out of a tire valve. At the same time, he inhales deeply, sucking it all into his lungs. Then he shoots the vial expertly into his wastebasket. "Reverend," the girl says. YT spins around to see her drifting toward the office. "Would you do mine now, please?" The Reverend Dale T. Thorpe does not answer. He is slumped back in his leather swivel chair and is staring at a neon-framed blow-up of Elvis in his army days, holding a rifle.
So we've gotten to the part of the book where some serious concentrated weirdness is starting to occur. This next chapter, it looks like we transition back to Hiro, so things ought to be interesting. We're gonna get some answers, or more questions. We shall see. Chapter 26. When he wakes up, it's the middle of the day and he is all dried out from the sun, and birds are circling overhead, trying to decide whether he's dead or alive. Hiro climbs down from the roof of the turret and, throwing caution to the wind, drinks 3 glasses of LA tap water. He gets some bacon out of Defivid's fridge and throws it in the microwave. Most of General Jim's people have left, and there is only a token guard of soldiers down on the road. Hiro locks all the doors that look out on the hillside, because he can't stop thinking about Raven. Then he sits at the kitchen table and goggles in. The Black Sun is mostly full of Asians, including a lot of people from the Bombay film industry, glaring at each other, stroking their black mustaches, trying to figure out what kind of hyper-violent action film will play in Persepolis next year. It is nighttime there. Hiro is one of the few Americans in the joint. Along the back wall of the bar is a row of private rooms, ranging from little tete-a-tetes to the big conference rooms, where a bunch of avatars can gather and have a meeting. Juanita is waiting for Hiro in one of the smaller ones. Her avatar looks like Juanita. It is an honest representation, with no effort made to hide the early suggestions of crow's feet at the corners of her big black eyes. Her glossy hair is so well resolved that Hiro can see individual strands refracting the light into tiny rainbows. "I'm at Defivid's house. Where are you?" Hiro says. "In an airplane, so I may break up," Juanita says. "You on your way here?" "To Oregon, actually." "Portland?" "Astoria." "Why on earth would you go to Astoria, Oregon at a time like this?" Juanita takes a deep breath, lets it out shakily. "If I told you, we'd get into an argument." "What's the latest word on Defivid?" Hiro says. "The same." "Any diagnosis?" Juanita sighs, looks tired. "There won't be any diagnosis," she says. "It's a software, not a hardware problem." "Huh?" "They're rounding up the usual suspects. CAT scans, NMR scans, PET scans, EEGs. Everything's fine. There's nothing wrong with his brain, his hardware." "It just happens to be running the wrong program?" "His software got poisoned. Defivid had a snow crash last night, inside his head." "Are you trying to say it's a psychological program?" "It kind of goes beyond those established categories," Juanita says, "because it's a new phenomenon. A very old one, actually." "Does this thing just happen spontaneously, or what?" "You tell me," she says. "You were there last night. Did anything happen after I left?" "He had a snow crash hypercard that he got from Raven outside the Black Sun." "Shit. That bastard." "Who's the bastard? Raven or Defivid?" "Defivid. I tried to warn him." "He used it." Hiro goes on to explain the brandy with the magic scroll. "Then later he had computer trouble and got bounced." "I heard about that part," she says. "That's why I called the paramedics." "I don't see the connection between Defivid's computer having a crash and you calling an ambulance." "The brandy scroll wasn't just showing random static. It was flashing up a large amount of digital information in binary form.
That digital information was going straight into Defivid's optic nerve, which is part of the brain, incidentally. If you stare into a person's pupil, you can see the terminal of the brain.
Defivid's not a computer. He can't read binary code.
He's a hacker. He messes with binary code for a living. That ability is firm-wired into the deep structures of his brain, so he's susceptible to that form of information. And so are you, homeboy.
What kind of information are we talking about?
Bad news. A metavirus, Juanita says. It's the atomic bomb of informational warfare, a virus that causes any system to infect itself with new viruses.
And that's what made Defivid sick?
Yes,
Why didn't I get sick?
too far away. Your eyes couldn't resolve the bitmap. It has to be right up in your face.
I'll think about that one, Hiro says. But I have another question. Raven also distributes another drug, in reality, called, among other things, Snow Crash. What is it?
It's not a drug, Juanita says. They make it look like a drug and feel like a drug so that people will want to take it. It's laced with cocaine and some other stuff.
If it's not a drug, what is it?
It's chemically processed blood serum taken from people who are infected with the metavirus, Juanita says. That is just another way of spreading the infection.
Who's spreading it?
L. Bob Reif's private church. All of those people are infected.
Hiro puts his head in his hands. He's not exactly thinking about this. He's letting it ricochet around in his skull, waiting for it to come to rest. Wait a minute, Juanita. Make up your mind. This snow crash thing. Is it a virus, a drug, or a religion?
Juanita shrugs. What's the difference?
That Juanita is talking this way does not make it any easier for Hiro to get back on his feet in this conversation.
How can you say that? You're a religious person yourself. Don't lump all religion together.
Sorry.
All people have religions. It's like we have religion receptors built into our brain cells or something, and we'll latch onto anything that'll fill the niche for us. Now, religion used to be essentially viral, a piece of information that replicated inside the human mind, jumping from one person to the next. That's the way it used to be, and unfortunately, that's the way it's headed right now. But there have been several efforts to deliver us from the hands of primitive, irrational religion. The first was made by someone named Enki about 4,000 years ago. The second was made by Hebrew scholars in the 8th century BC, driven out of their homeland by the invasion of Sargon II, but eventually it just developed into empty legalism. Another attempt was made by Jesus. That one was hijacked by viral influences within 50 days of his death. The virus was suppressed by the Catholic Church, but we're in the middle of a big epidemic that started in Kansas in 1900 and has been gathering momentum ever since. Do you believe in God or not?
Hiro says. First things first.
Definitely.
Do you believe in Jesus?
Yes, but not in the physical bodily resurrection of Jesus.
How can you be a Christian without believing in that?
I would say, Juanita says, how can you be a Christian with it? Anyone who takes the trouble to study the Gospels can see that the bodily resurrection is a myth that was tacked on to the real story several years after the real histories were written. It's so National Enquirer-esque, don't you think?
Beyond that, Juanita doesn't have much to say. She doesn't want to get into it now, she says. She doesn't want to prejudice Hiro's thinking at this point. Does that imply that there's going to be some other point? Is this a continuing relationship? Hiro says.
Do you want to find the people who infected Defivid?
Yes. Hell, Juanita, even if it weren't for the fact that he is my friend, I'd want to find them before they infect me.
Look at the Babel stack, Hiro, then visit me if I get back from Astoria.
If you get back? What are you doing there?
Research. She's been putting on a businesslike front through this whole talk, spitting out information, telling Hiro the way it is. But she's tired and anxious, and Hiro gets the idea that she's deeply afraid. Good luck, he says. He was all ready to do some flirting with her during this meeting, picking up where they left off last night. But something has changed in Juanita's mind between then and now. Flirting is the last thing on her mind. Juanita is going to do something dangerous in Oregon. She doesn't want Hiro to know about it so that he won't worry. There's some good stuff in the Babel stack about someone named Inanna, she says.
Who's Inanna?
A Sumerian goddess. I'm sort of in love with her. Anyway, you can't understand what I'm about to do until you understand Inanna.
Well, good luck, Hiro says. Say hi to Inanna for me.
Thanks.
When you get back, I want to spend some time with you.
The feeling is mutual, she says, but we have to get out of this first.
Oh, I didn't realize I was in something.
Don't be a sap. We're all in it. Hiro leaves, exiting into the black sun. There is one guy wandering around the hacker quadrant who really stands out. His avatar doesn't look so hot, and he's having trouble controlling it. He looks like a guy who's just goggled into the metaverse for the first time and doesn't know how to move around. He keeps bumping into tables, and when he wants to turn around, he spins around several times, not knowing how to stop himself. Hiro walks toward him, because his face seems a little familiar. When the guy finally stops moving long enough for Hiro to resolve him clearly, he recognizes the avatar. It's a Clint, most often seen in the company of a brandy. The Clint recognizes Hiro, and his surprised face comes on for a second, and then is replaced by his usual stern, stiff-lipped, craggy appearance. He holds up his hands together in front of him, and Hiro sees that he is holding a scroll, just like Brandy's. Hiro reaches for his katana, but the scroll is already up in his face, spreading open to reveal the blue glare of the bitmap inside. He sidesteps, gets over to one side of the Clint, raising the katana overhead, snaps the katana straight down and cuts the Clint's arms off. As the scroll falls, it spreads open even wider. Hiro doesn't dare look at it now. The Clint has turned around and is awkwardly trying to escape from the black sun, bouncing from table to table like a pinball. If Hiro could kill the guy, cut his head off, then his avatar would stay in the black sun, be carried away by the graveyard demons. Hiro would do some hacking and maybe figure out who he is, where he's coming from. But a few dozen hackers are lounging around the bar, watching all of this, and if they come over and look at the scroll, they'll all end up like Defivid. Hiro squats down, looking away from the scroll, and pulls up one of the hidden trapdoors that lead down into the tunnel system. He's the one who coded those tunnels into the Black Sun to begin with. He's the only person in the whole bar who can use them. He sweeps the scroll into the tunnel with one hand, then closes the door. Hiro can see the Clint, way over near the exit, trying to get his avatar aimed out through the door. Hiro runs after him. If the guy reaches the street, he's gone. He'll turn into a translucent ghost. With a 50-foot head start and a crowd of a million other translucent ghosts, there's just no way. As usual, there's a crowd of wannabes gathered on the street out front. Hiro can see the usual assortment, including a few black and white people. One of those black and whites is YT. She's loitering out there, waiting for Hiro to come out. YT, he shouts. Chase that guy with no arms. Hiro gets out the door just a few seconds after the Clint does. Both the Clint and YT are already gone. He turns back into the black sun, pulls up a trap door, and drops down into the tunnel system, the realm of the graveyard daemons. One of them has already picked up the scroll and is trudging in toward the center to throw it on the fire. Hey, bud, Hiro says. Take a right turn at the next tunnel and leave that thing in my office, okay? But do me a favor and roll it up first. He follows the graveyard daemon down the tunnel, under the street, until they're under the neighborhood where Hiro and the other hackers have their houses. Hiro has the graveyard daemons deposit the rolled up scroll in his workshop, down in the basement, the room where Hiro does his hacking. Then Hiro continues upstairs to his office.
curiouser and curiouser. Chapter 27. His voice phone is ringing. Hiro picks it up.
Pod? YT says, I was beginning to think you'd never come out of there.
Where are you? Hiro says.
In reality or the metaverse?
Both.
In the metaverse, I'm on a plus-bound monorail train. Just passed by Port 35.
Already? Must be an express.
Good thinking. That clinch you cut the arms off of is 2 cars ahead of me. I don't think he knows I'm following him.
Where are you in reality?
Public terminal across the street from a Reverend Wayne's, she says.
Oh, yeah? How interesting.
Just made a delivery there.
What kind of delivery?
An aluminum suitcase.
He gets the whole story out of her, or what he thinks is the whole story. There's no real way to tell. You're sure that the babbling that the people did in the park was the same as the babbling that the woman did at the Reverend Wayne's?
Sure, she said. I know a bunch of people who go there, or their parents go there and drag them along, you know.
To the Reverend Wayne's pearly gates?
Yeah, and they all do that speaking in tongues, so I've heard it before.
I'll talk to you later, Pod, Hiro says. I've got some serious research to do.
Later.
The Babel Infocalypse card is resting in the middle of his desk. Hiro picks it up. The librarian comes in. Hiro is about to ask the librarian whether he knows that Lagos is dead. But it's a pointless question. The librarian knows it, but he doesn't. If he wanted to check the library, he could find out in a few moments, but he wouldn't really retain the information. He doesn't have an independent memory. The library is his memory, and he only uses small parts of it at once. What can you tell me about speaking in tongues? Hiro says. The technical term is glossolalia, the librarian says. Technical term? Why bother to have a technical term for a religious ritual? The librarian raises his eyebrows. Oh, there's a great deal of technical literature on the subject. It is a neurological phenomenon that is merely exploited in religious rituals. It's a Christian thing, right? Pentecostal Christians think so, but they are deluding themselves. Pagan Greeks did it. Plato called it theomania. The Oriental cults of the Roman Empire did it. Hudson Bay Eskimos, Chukchi shamans, Laps, Yakuts, Semang pygmies, the North Borneo cults, the Turhi-speaking priests of the Ghana, the Zulu Amandiki cult, and the Chinese religious sect of the Shang Tihui. Spirit mediums of Tonga and the Brazilian Umbanda cult. The Tungus tribesmen of Siberia say that when the shaman goes into his trance and raves incoherent syllables, he learns the entire language of nature. The language of nature. Yes, sir. The Sukuma people of Africa say that the language is Kinaturu, the tongue of the ancestors of all magicians, who are thought to have descended from one particular tribe. What causes it? If mystical explanations are ruled out, then it seems that glossolalia comes from structures buried deep within the brain, common to all people. What does it look like? How do these people act? C. W. Shumway observed the Los Angeles revival of 1906 and noted 6 basic symptoms: complete loss of rational control, dominance of emotion that leads to hysteria, absence of thought or will, automatic functioning of the speech organs, amnesia, and occasional sporadic physical manifestations such as jerking or twitching. Eusebius observed similar phenomena around the year 300, saying that the false prophet begins by a deliberate suppression of conscious thought and ends up in a delirium over which he has no control. What's the Christian justification for this? Is there anything in the Bible that backs this up? Pentecost.
Hello, cat.
You mentioned that word earlier. What is it? From the Greek Pentekostos, meaning 50th. It refers to the 50th day after the crucifixion. Juanita just told me that Christianity was hijacked by viral influences when it was only 50 days old. She must have been talking about this. What is it? And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues, as the Spirit gave them utterance. Now there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews, devout men from every nation under heaven. And at this sound the multitude came together, and they were bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in his own language. And they were amazed and wondered, saying, Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear, each of us in his own native language? Parthians and Medes and Elamites and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabians, we hear them telling in our own tongues the mighty works of God. And all were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, What does this mean? Acts 2:4-12. Damned if I know, Hiro says. Sounds like Babel in reverse. Yes, sir. Many Pentecostal Christians believe that the gift of tongues was given to them so that they could spread their religion to other people without having to actually learn their language. The word for that is xenoglossy. That's what Rife was claiming in that piece of videotape on top of the Enterprise. He said he could understand what those Bangladeshis were saying. Yes, sir. Does that really work? In the 16th century, St. Louis Bertrand allegedly used the gift of tongues to convert somewhere between 30,000 and 300,000 South American Indians to Christianity. The librarian says, Wow, spread through that population even faster than smallpox. Sorry about that slight delay. Ooh, almost done here. What did the Jews think of this Pentecost thing? Hiro says. They were still running the country, right? The Romans were running the country, the librarian says, but there were a number of Jewish religious authorities. At this time there were three groups of Jews, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes. I remember the Pharisees from Jesus Christ Superstar. They were the ones with the deep voices who were always hassling Christ. They were hassling him, the librarian says, because they were religiously very strict. They adhered to a strong legalistic version of the religion. To them, the law was everything. Clearly, Jesus was a threat to them because he was proposing, in effect, to do away with the law. He wanted a contract renegotiation with God. This sounds like an analogy, which I am not very good at, but even if it is taken literally, it is true. Who were the other two groups? The Sadducees were materialists. Meaning what? They drove BMWs? No, materialists in the philosophical sense. All philosophies are either monist or dualist. Monists believe that the material world is the only world, hence materialists. Dualists believe in a binary universe, that there is a spiritual world in addition to the material world. Well, as a computer geek, I have to believe in the binary universe. The librarian raises his eyebrows. How does that follow? Sorry, it's a joke. A bad pun. See, computers use binary code to represent information. So I was joking that I have to believe in the binary universe, that I would have to be a dualist. That I have to be a dualist. How droll, the librarian says, not sounding very amused. Your joke may not be without genuine merit, however. How's that? I was just kidding, really. Computers rely on the 1 and the 0 to represent all things. This distinction between something and nothing, this pivotal separation between being and non-being, is quite fundamental and underlies many creation myths. Hiro feels his face getting slightly warm, feels himself getting annoyed. He suspects that the librarian may be pulling his leg, playing him for a fool. But he knows that the librarian, however convincingly rendered he may be, is just a piece of software and cannot actually do such things. Even the word science is from an Indo-European root meaning to cut or to separate. The same root led to the word shit, which of course means to separate living flesh from non-living waste. The same root gave us scythe and scissors and schism, which have obvious connections to the concept of separation. How about sword? From a root with several meanings. One of those meanings is to cut or pierce, one of them is post or rod, and the other is, simply, to speak. Let's stay on track, Hiro says. Fine, I can return to this potential conversation fork at a later time if you desire. I don't want to get all forked up at this point. Tell me about the third group, the Essenes. They lived communally and believed that physical and spiritual cleanliness were intimately connected. They were constantly bathing themselves, lying naked under the sun, purging themselves with enemas, and going to extreme lengths to make sure that their food was pure and uncontaminated. They even had their own version of the Gospels in which Jesus healed possessed people, not with miracles, but by driving parasites, such as tapeworms, out of their body. These parasites are considered to be synonymous with demons. They sound kind of like hippies. The connection has been made before, but it is faulty in many ways. The Essenes were strictly religious and would never have taken drugs. So to them, there was no difference between infection with a parasite, like tapeworm, and demonic possession. Correct. Interesting. I wonder what they would have thought about computer viruses. Speculation is not in my ambit. Speaking of which, Lagos was babbling to me about viruses and infection, and something called a Nam-Shub. What does that mean? Nam-Shub is a word from Sumerian. Sumerian? Yes, sir. Used in Mesopotamia until roughly 2000 BC, the oldest of all written languages. Oh, so all the other languages are descended from it? For a moment, the librarian's eyes glance upward, as if he's thinking about something. This is a visual cue to inform Hiro that he's making a momentary raid on the library. Actually, no, the librarian says. No languages whatsoever are descended from Sumerian. It is an agglutinative tongue, meaning that it is a collection of morphemes or syllables that are grouped into words. Very unusual. You are saying, Hiro says, remembering to five it in the hospital, that if I could hear someone speaking Sumerian, it would sound like a long stream of short syllables strung together. Yes, sir. Would it sound anything like glossolalia? Judgment call. Ask someone real, the librarian says. Does it sound like any modern tongue? There is no provable genetic relationship between Sumerian and any tongue that came afterward. That's odd. My Mesopotamian history is rusty, Hiro says. What happened to the Sumerians? Genocide? No, sir. They were conquered, but there's no evidence of genocide per se. Everyone gets conquered sooner or later, Hiro says, but their languages don't die out. Why did Sumerian disappear? Since I am just a piece of code, I would be on very thin ice to speculate, the librarian says. Okay. Does anyone understand Sumerian? Yes, at any given time it appears that there are roughly 10 people in the world who can read it. Where do they work? One in Israel, one at the British Museum, one in Iraq, one at the University of Chicago, one at the University of Pennsylvania, and 5 at the Rife Bible College in Houston, Texas. Nice distribution. And have any of these people figured out what the word Namshub means in Sumerian? Yes, a Namshub is a speech with magical force. The closest English equivalent would be incantation, but this has a number of incorrect connotations. Do the Sumerians believe in magic? The librarian shakes his head minutely. This is the kind of seemingly precise question that is in fact very profound, and that pieces of software, such as myself, are notoriously clumsy at. Allow me to quote from Kramer, Samuel Noah, and Meyer John R. Myths of Enki, the Crafty God. New York, Oxford, Oxford University Press, 1989. Religion, magic, and medicine are so completely intertwined in Mesopotamia that separating them is frustrating and perhaps futile work. Sumerian incantations demonstrate an intimate connection between the religious, the magical, and the aesthetic so complete that any attempt to pull one away from the other will distort the whole. There is more material in here that might help explain the subject. In where? In the next room, the librarian says, gesturing at the wall. He walks over and slides the rice paper partition out of the way. A speech with magical force. Nowadays, people don't believe in these kinds of things. Except in the metaverse, that is, where magic is possible. The metaverse is a fictional structure made out of code. And code is just a form of speech. The form that computers understand. The metaverse in its entirety could be considered a single vast Nam-Shub, enacting itself on L. Bob Rife's fiber optic network. The voice phone rings. Just a second, Hiro says. Take your time, the librarian says, not adding the obvious reminder that he can wait for 1,000,000 years if need be.
Me again, YT says. I'm still on the train. Stumps got off at Expressport 127.
That's the antipode of downtown. I mean, it's as far away from downtown as you can get.
It is?
Yeah, 127 is 2 to the 7th power minus 1.
Spare me, I'll take your word for it. It's definitely out in the middle of fucking nowhere, she says.
You didn't get off and follow him?
Are you kidding? All the way out there? It's 10,000 miles from the nearest building, Hiro.
She has a point. The metaverse was built with plenty of room to expand. Almost all of the development is within 2 or 3 express ports, 500 kilometers or so, of downtown. Port 127 is 20,000 miles away. What is there?
A black cube exactly 20 miles on a side.
Totally black?
Yeah.
How can you measure a black cube that big?
I'm riding along looking at the stars, okay? Suddenly, I can't see them anymore on the right side of the train. I start counting local ports. I count 16 of them. We get to Expressport 127, and Stumpy climbs off and goes toward the black thing. I count 16 more local ports, and then the stars come out. Then I take 32 kilometers and multiply it by .6, and I get 20 miles. You asshole.
That's good, Hiro says. That's good intel.
Who do you think owns a black cube 20 miles across?
Just going on pure irrational bias, I'm guessing L. Bob Rife. Supposedly, he has a big hunk of real estate out in the middle of nowhere where he keeps all the guts of the metaverse. Some of us used to smash into it occasionally when we were out racing motorcycles.
Well, gotta go, Pod.
And with that, I am going to have to call it a day. Hope people are enjoying these. I know I certainly am, though it's been a bit shaky because I'm a tad rusty and out of practice. Yeah, so I do ideally do this every week on Saturday, same time, noonish Eastern Standard. I also have other streams throughout the week, Mecha Mondays and Warframe Wednesdays. Mecha Mondays, I do something mecha or giant robot related, or adjacent, as the case may be. Power armor counts, damn it. And on Warframe Wednesdays, I do something Warframe related. All right, and it's roughly the same times every day, about 12 noon Eastern Standard. Uh, that'll do it for me today. Thanks for tuning in, and Have a great week. If you're watching this after the fact, feel free to give feedback or comment or whatever. I'm always happy to get feedback so I can adjust accordingly. Thanks again and have a great week. See you next